In this video, I'm gonna show you how to make your sales team even better this year by making the CRM and your sales pipeline process as simple as possible, whether using HubSpot, GHL, or another CRM, so that way your sales guys do what they're supposed to do and drive more revenue for your business. All right, so if you are a business owner or a sales leader and you have a sales team that is driving revenue to grow your business and you're trying to just figure out, hey, how do I actually get my sales guys to work the leads better, to perform and drive more revenue, and how can I have better accountability and insight into how they're working leads? This video is for you. Now, why should you listen to me? You don't have to. There's a million videos you could be watching, but I've been building sales teams and doing sales for almost 15 years. I've helped scale and build my own companies from, zero to multi-seven figures in under 12 months. And I've done this with dozens and dozens of teams. I've worked with companies that are doing 2 to 3 million a year, all the way up to companies doing 40 to 50 million a year. And I'm about to show you exactly how to architect, like how to piece together your CRM and like lead management or your sales motions, your pipeline management, both with your outbound efforts when you're working leads and with your inbound booked appointments. How should you set up those two different ends of the business? And what sort of KPIs and data can and should you be tracking to know if you are on point or if there's something broke in the system? So I'm going to be very, very clear. It's going to be very tactical, and I'm going to get into it with you right now. The first thing, though, I do want to mention is you might be using HubSpot, you might be using GHL. If you're more enterprise level, then you're working with Salesforce and all that craziness. This is going to work across most of these mediums, but the main thing you should understand is you need to have the right CRM structure and you need to have the right dialer structure, right? Because whether you're doing cold outbound to generate leads, or if you're doing paid marketing or you've got organic traffic to drive inbound leads, those leads then need to be worked. They need to be put through your process, right? They need to be contacted enough, first of all, to engage. After they're engaged, they need to be qualified for your services. After they're qualified, they need to be warmed up and ready for the sales process. And then they need to enter the sales pipeline and go through a sales process there to convert. And again, to speak to some of the naysayers where you might already be thinking like, yeah, but my business is pretty unique and I haven't found anything that works for my business. I promise your business isn't that unique. I've helped companies architect and build this sort of sales process with their teams, whether they had 25, 30 salespeople, whether they had 2 salespeople. It works for fitness, it works for capital raising, it works for real estate, it works for insurance, it works for so many different markets, B2C, B2B, it does not matter. Now, will there be changes and customizations that you need to pull in? Of course. So without further ado, let's get into this. So let's talk about the outbound side first. And hopefully you do have a dialer, or you have some process to power dial and or outbound email and outbound text, right? At the end of the day though, typically even B2B and definitely B2C, you eventually are driving all those efforts to get people to a phone call because you do need to communicate with them to get them on the phone to actually be qualified. And so the way that I typically orient this is these are the different buckets. And so if we're talking phone burner, there would be like these different folders, or if you're using Nooks or you're using some other sort of dialing software, you obviously want one bucket, which is where all your new untouched leads come in, right? So you're running Facebook ads, you get the lead capture, maybe they need to watch a webinar, maybe they need to book into the calendar. If they don't, that automation then triggers them to the dialer. And then from there, we want speed to lead. Now, how do we do that? Well, we have to queue new leads to the top of that power dialing campaign. The goal is to contact that lead then within under 3 minutes, okay? But then after that attempt, whether you're doing double dialing or not, after that attempt, they need to go over to a receiving folder, which I'm not showing here, but they need to go out of that dialing campaign. Because if you got multiple setters working leads, after someone contacts a lead, you don't want someone else to contact them 2 seconds later, and all of a sudden you're contacting the same lead 15 times in the same day. That's obviously not even compliant with TSR regulation, but you're also wasting, like you're basically pestering this person. They're not even gonna wanna talk to you. So we usually do a 3-hour recycle. So you'll contact the lead once, they go out of that campaign, so that way only the new untouched leads are still there, and then they'll go into a working campaign. And that working campaign is they're gonna constantly recycle out of that campaign every 3 hours. So ideally you're getting 3 attempts a day if you have an 8 or 9 hour window. And we're having them sit in that bucket until we've touched them 15 times. So we've done 15 call attempts, and usually then, because we're doing 3 a day, we can get that done in 5 days. So in the first week, we've done those 15 attempts. And as you know, the average number of attempts it takes for a lead to be contacted to get engaged is 8 to 10 times. So that's what that's looking like. Then we would go to a follow-up folder. So this is where you contact people. Maybe they can't finish the call, you can't finish the triage. They're like, hey, can you call me back? That would be a follow-up. So these are very warm people, they're engaged, they're just not through the process. Obviously, if you book the appointment, then you set the appointment, they get removed from these workflows. If they get 15 touches without engagement, then they go to this cool off. They'll sit in the cool off for 15 days. Then they'll go back to the working bucket to be re-engaged. DQs is a fallout folder, right? So they're not qualified for your services. They're not interested anymore. It could be timing, could be a number of reasons. Or they're like, hey, this is the wrong number, or like, don't call me. Then we need to add them to DNC. Those are 3 fallouts. Now, what I would recommend that you push into your dialer are some custom fields from the opt-in stage. That could be form information. Obviously, you gotta put your name, phone number, and email. You wanna push that. You might want some sort of source tag that indicates, hey, this is a meta lead, or this is a Google lead, or this is a particular campaign lead, this is a webinar lead, whatever. And then any other tags that might help you organize data correctly. And then in the dialer settings itself, we want to be doing power dial with preview, so that way you can actually look at the lead while you're dialing before they pick up. We want 25 seconds of ring time because we don't want to abandon calls, because that's going to hurt your spam rate. We want to have like a voicemail and SMS drop on the first attempt only, because you don't want to barrage someone with all these texts and voicemails. They're going to feel like they're pestering you again. But if they see a number they don't know, they won't answer it. But now that you have a voicemail and a text, they might call you back. Now you have an inbound. You want number pools, because as number gets spam flagged, you're rotating those numbers every 100 dials, so that way you're mitigating that risk. You always want to bring the newest leads to the top of these campaigns, and then you always want the fewest attempts at the top, especially for your working bucket, so that you're constantly hitting those ones that have the fewest attempts at the top, and you're working down to getting people to those 15 touches. So that's what the outbound process looks like. Hopefully that's already making sense. This is bringing clarity for you. Leads have to be worked like crazy. You guys are in an attention war, and they opt into your stuff, and guess what the algorithms do? They send them ads to your competitors and to similar offers, and they start opting into that crap. So whoever gets to the lead first and whoever does the most work to get these leads engaged is who's gonna win the business, right? Now, I'm not gonna get into the setting process of like the scripting and all that kind of stuff. You can see my other videos on that, but I did want to just mention the importance of having an outbound architecture with your dialer in this way. Okay, so then we go to the inbound. So this is like your GHL setup, your HubSpot setup, etc. Essentially, you might have multiple calls in your sales process, then you would add those buckets here. You might have a contract signing, you might add those buckets here. There could be a negotiation and contract that you might need to add. This is just the more basic layer. The main thing is someone enters the sales pipeline when they become a booked appointment, okay? Before that, they're not in the sales pipeline. They're just a lead. We're working the lead. But if we've qualified them and put them into the sales calendar, they should be in the sales pipeline. And so we've got a new unconfirmed call, then we've got new confirmed calls, then we've got people who are progressed, but they're not lost or won, and then you've got one, you got lost. Pretty basic. Just to speak on a couple of these things. New call that's unconfirmed. You want a speed to confirm appointments. So say the setter sets the appointment, they book in, you want a human, i.e. the salesperson, to also custom reach out, send a text, do a call. Hey, I saw you booked in my calendar, I saw you spoke with my colleague, looks like you're looking for X, Y, and Z. We'll go over those details. Anything else I should know to get the most out of our time? It's that type of thing, right? And that handoff makes your show rate much better. You want one email SMS confirming the appointment, and that's automated, and then you want one value email. That value email is like market research, market trends, social proof, company information, etc. It needs to be valuable to the prospect, that's going to warm them for this sales call. Sometimes it's a shortened VSL, sometimes it's a webinar replay, it could be a number of things. After they've confirmed with you that they're coming to the appointment, they get moved over to this bucket. So they've replied to communication, so they're confirmed now. And then they just have their auto reminders for the appointment itself. Usually I like a 24-hour, a 4-hour, and a 1. More than that, the no-show rate goes up because you're barraging them with too much. Less than this, sometimes people forget. So that's the sweet spot. All right, what is showed progress? So they're not lost, but they do need some sort of follow-up. You gotta follow up the spouse. They gotta talk with their business partner. They gotta look at the finances. You couldn't overcome the objections and you set a follow-up date. That's why they're in the progress bucket. And then 1 is pretty obvious that you won the business. Lost, it's pretty obvious they said no. Now, what custom fields need to be attached to these? When someone moves to a progressed bucket, you need to force the rep to fill out the reason for progress. What was the reason for progress? This reason. If someone goes to close 1, you have to force cash collected, right? Or contract value or contract details, you can have custom fields that force them to fill it out when they move them to closed 1. And then force them to respond to reason lost, right? Because you want to understand why people are moving into these different buckets, okay? So that's how you would do the inbound management on the sales process. Hopefully that is helping to shed light. That can be set up in GHL with the automations. It can be set up in HubSpot with the automations, all that kind of jazz. So now let's go to the KPIs and what are the important KPIs that you should be tracking and looking at. And this is, again, in our experience, what we look at and we set up for companies. I'm not gonna fill in all the data for every day, but essentially, we want to see our cost of acquisition from a marketing standpoint. So you can also include commissions and things like that to get your total cost of acquisition. But this is just your marketing cost of acquisition. So you got your ad spend, how many leads did that bring in, how many dials were done that day, how many talks, so live conversations, how many appointments were set. So your contact rate is how many conversations you had compared to leads, right? We want to talk to all the leads. What's the set rate? So if we have 30 talks, we set 10 appointments and we're booking 1/3 of the people we talk to. So that's your set rate. Your DQ rate, when you mark as a disposition that someone was DQ'd, so if you mark that disposition, well, what's our DQ rate? Because if our goal KPI is 20% as a DQ rate and we're above that, then we might need to go to the marketing team or look at the marketing and be like, hey, we're actually bringing in more of the wrong leads. That's hurting revenue. Lead efficiency, as you can see, would be how many appointments were set based on the number of leads you generated. And you guys might want to be, booking a certain percentage of the leads into the calendar. So that would be your lead efficiency. Cost per lead, that's pretty obvious. Everyone knows that. Cost per appointment. Your shows, which is how many actually showed compared to appointments. And then you've got your show rate. And then so now you've got your cost per show. Now I actually track this, and not a lot of companies do, but you actually want to track your cost per showed call, because a lot of people do cost per call, but their show rate's terrible, and they're kind of like looking at the wrong metric in that regard. But if your show rate is, strong 70%, then, we're doing good. How many sales? The conversion, which is how many sales compared to shows. That's the actual opportunities the sales guy had. And then what's your cost per sale? And then what you would want to do is set your KPIs for each of those buckets. Hey, we're aiming to spend $250 a day, so we're 100% to goal. Hey, we're aiming to generate 16 leads a day. We generated 25, so we're 156% to goal. Hey, we're trying to do 300 dials a day. Our team did 250, so we're at 83% of goal. So you can see here, if you're not at 100%, you really can just quickly identify who needs to be yelled at and what needs to happen, right? Hey, we're trying to book 9 appointments a day. We booked 10, so we're past goal. All that kind of stuff. So you guys can actually have your KPIs and if you're at goal or not. And when you guys have your CRM and your pipeline structured this way, it makes it very easy, simple, and clear, because simple scales. If you can't make this as easy as possible with 2 reps and 1 offering, trust me, it's gonna get way more complicated with all the tags and buckets and stuff when you got 50 salespeople and you got 14 offerings. So give me a like and a subscribe if you felt like this video was helpful of knowing how to organize your GHL HubSpot sales deal pipelines and sales pipeline flow. If this helped with your dialer and the motions that you use to engage leads that you're driving with the marketing team, and comment below. Let me know if you guys have custom things that you want help with or whatever. And also, if you guys want to do a free audit where me or my team, we can come in, we can look at your business, we can see what you guys are tracking, we can look at your buckets and see if the CRM architecture, like the sales architecture, needs to be retooled, restructured, quality control needs to happen, new script and sales process, playbooks. We do it all. So if that's something you're interested in, you can click one of the links below in the description, and I'll catch you on the next video.